know, I mean, think about it. You're George Bush. It's the aftermath of 9/11. You look at this region. You've got a bunch of, I hate to say it, but I mean, you got a bunch of barbarians in the desert. What do you do with this region? You have to take a step to improve the region. You can't just drift on with these brutal
despots. Who are you calling barbarian in the desert,
so,
Jack Burkman?
I mean, let's face it.
No. Who are you referring to? I would like you to point that out.
I am referring to the entire Mideast. The world is doing well.
Barbarians?
This world, sure they are. You've got people living in the 6th century, for God's sakes. I mean, most of the Islamic world, I mean, Islam has become this crazy ideology where people are living in the 6th century. I mean, and they want to blame the colonialism. They want to blame the British and the Americans
Jack Burkman,
for everything.
If there was any sympathy before
ridiculous.
this show started with you, you lost it when you called barbarian in the desert.
You have to understand something. I mean, if you look at George Bush, look at what kind of countries you had. You've got Saddam there. The fact that Saddam was taken out, Bush had to do something to improve the region. You can't just let it drift on.
Can I ask this? Why did he have to do so? I mean, was it out of the kindness of his heart? Was it to rescue these barbarians, as you put it, from their own selves and their own crazed ideology, as you put it? I mean, why on earth do you think that George... I mean, who's the barbarian here, Jack? You have sent your sons and daughters to bombard people's homes, to burn their homes, to obliterate their livings, and they have done nothing to you, yet they are the barbarians in this case. I'm sorry, I beg to differ. I beg to differ.
So what? Okay, so what is your plan for the Mideast now? What would you have done? Just let them drift on with a guy like Saddam? How would you improve this region? What would be the future
most of the dictators in this region?
Where would there be hope?
Most of the dictators in this region, many of whom are indeed barbarians, are supported by the United States with funding, with military support, and with political support. Many of these barbarians, who have to live in this bloody region, Jack, have to live with, they are your friends, and that's the problem.
You're right. You're right,
Thank you.
But you have to start somewhere. Some of it's of necessity. You can't do this in the peninsula.
Why not start in Egypt? Why not start in Egypt? Why not Egypt? Why not Jordan?
Because it'd be too.
Why not Syria? Syria, you don't like Syria. Why not Syria?
Syria is inconsequential. If you do it in Egypt,
it doesn't have oil. There's too much chaos in the region. You mean Syria doesn't have oil? That's the point, isn't it?
Who gave you the right to launch an illegal war? That's fundamental questions people are going to ask for many decades.
You know, who gave us the right? I mean, okay, look, I'll get even more controversial here. Did George Bush, I'm an eyewitness to history, I can tell you that George Bush, Dick Cheney, and the whole administration, it was never about weapons of mass destruction. They knew that stuff wasn't there. That's a bunch of trumped up nonsense.
So they lied
I'd be
to
the
the American people.
Now, of course they did.
They lied to the American people.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I can tell you as an eyewitness to history, they lied. And they should have lied. I mean, you know, they needed to do that because they needed to put a large American army in the heart of the Arab world.
If that is the case, they lied and they should have lied. Who's the barbarian then?
Oh, look at what's happened since you have a big American army in the heart of the Mideast. The Iranians are calmer. Lebanon is calmer. The region is much calmer than it was in 2001.
I live in
Lebanon.
Lebanon.
It is a better place. It's a far better place.
Just the word to Jack, I mean, if you're in a pit, stop digging. And you are digging even deeper, and you're digging yourself into a problem simply because, I mean, once again, unfortunately, what Jack represents is a constituency within the United States. And I'm more than happy to say that hopefully it's not the majority of the American people. I still harbor a lot of hope for the American people. But Jack represents a constituency which has never been to this particular region. They can't even locate it on a map, yet they see it fit.
I have been to the region.
They see it fit to issue judgments over who these people are, how they live, how they believe in worship, yet they have no grasp of history, they have no grasp of geography. All they care about is interest. Yet he calls the people in this particular region barbarians, yet he has just said, as he puts it, a witness to history, that his leaders had to lie to the American people to go into an illegal war.
He's right. He's right. The war wouldn't have been politically possible, and had Bush not done that and had sent Colin Powell to the UN to say that, it wouldn't have been possible. But George Bush did what was right for the country and right for the world, and frankly, right for the Mideast. This is the ultimate beneficiaries of this will be the Iraqi people, will be the people of the region who will have a future and who will have a chance. They're locked in darkness.
So let's go. This is the first time I've ever participated in an Al Jazeera comedy show. Look, we're in Iraq. We, the British, were there, of course, and we've run away already, as we will in Afghanistan before Jack's army realizes it. We went to Iraq because of oil. That's the only reason. The reason Jack refers to Syria, which presumably in his view is also labouring in barbaric darkness, is that Syria doesn't have oil.
Yes.
If Iraq's national product had been potatoes or broccoli, the 82nd Airborne wouldn't have gone to Baghdad and Mosul, and that's the fact of the matter.
Well, wait, you're right. See, you're exactly right. You're
Thanks,
missing
Jack.
the point.
Well, that's
you're
great.
Exactly
We're
right.
moving
All of that's
forward,
true,
as they say in Washington.
But you have to hear me out on this. That you're right in that's why the U.S. is fundamentally interested in this region. What I'm talking about is, okay, yes, those are American interests, oil in Israel. That's why we're there. We're not there overall for humanitarian reasons. Of course, I can see that. Everybody knows that. But now the question becomes, how tactically do you improve the region? How do you get this region out of darkness?
Jack, I tell you how it's been brought out of darkness as far as the people in the region are concerned, although they don't like the sight of the darkness. Iran has won the war. Iran now effectively runs Iraq, and it will continue, because what the war has proved is what we all knew, but Saddam didn't let us talk about, was that Iraq is a Shiite country. And many of the parties involved in government, people like the Dawa Party, who speak directly to the Americans, whom you now love, and because they're anti-barbarian or whatever, the Dawa Party were a major, what you would call, terrorist group in the 80s and 90s, trying to blow up the Emir of Kuwait, blowing up American embassies and so on. Basically, Iran has won the war, and they are extremely grateful to the United States.
And that is the big blunder the United States committed. That's the big blunder your former
But Tehran
boss,
is very just, and Tehran is very grateful to George Bush.
Indeed,
for
she
getting rid of
is,
Saddam.
for
That's
removing the two dikes, and that is the
You
Taliban
have to
and Saddam
understand your
Hussein.
presumption. There's a presumption here, and you're saying Iran has won the war. There's a presumption here, and the only way to preserve... Okay, but you have a presumption. We have to lay bare your presumption. Let's explicate it. Your presumption is that the only way to preserve stability is essentially to have a dictatorship in Iraq and a dictatorship in Iran. Democracy is not possible. Don't try. The only way to have stability is to lock this thing down and leave it locked down forever. Now, Bush said, I understand the risk. I understand what can happen here, but I think we should take some long-term risk. I think we should take a chance on planting seeds, and just maybe these flowers can grow.
That is one
That's
point
what
of
Bush
view,
said.
Jack Burkman, but the other point of view now by experts, including the American experts, including the current administration of Obama, that this was a grave and colossal blunder committed by George Bush.
I just don't understand grave and colossal blunder. I mean, Saddam, you're talking about a person that killed hundreds of thousands of people with terrible
The
weapons.
removal of Saddam regime is not a fundamental victory.
Listen,
it is not a big achievement.
I mean, you make it as though the Iraqi people were somehow in love with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was the pet of the West. He was armed, he was funded, he was aided by your own government as well as many others for many years, and he was given the same weapon. Hang on, he was given the weapons in order to kill his own people as well as to make the country a threat to its neighbors. So the filthy hand of the West, including your own government, is severely inside Iraq. When you talk about darkness, Jack, it's Iraq since the 9th of April 2003 has been plunged in darkness, and for the past 7 years, any normal Iraqi, you say there's a condo boom. I don't know who these people are who are buying condos in Iraq right now, but I would suggest that the Iraqi people till now do not have the luxury of running electricity, and therefore they are currently under the American occupation.
How deep it is. Go ahead, Robert.
To Jack. I was banned. I've got a question for you, Jack. I was banned from Iraq because I described the mass rape and killing of Saddam's prisoners by Saddam's men at a prison called Abu Ghraib. On the day I was banned, Donald Rumsfeld went to shake hands with Saddam Hussein to improve relations and reopen the American embassy. Why did he do that?
Well, I mean, to your point, America. I would go so far as to concede that America
Why did Rumsfeld do that?
Why did Rumsfeld do that? You're right. At one point, Saddam was an ally. At one point, we were concerned. We were concerned that there needed to be a buffer against Iran.
Why was he a nice guy back then?
Was he a nice guy back then?
Because our perception at the time was that to preserve balance of power, to hold the line in that region, we needed to be, Saddam needed to be an ally.
The line against Iran, right? The line against Iran.
Look, I'll even take it further.
now won the
Look,
war.
I'm not arguing that. I concede all of these points. We created, in a lot of ways, the United States created the Ba'athists. In a lot of ways, George Bush himself, Bush's father, was very close to Saddam in the 80s. I mean, it could even be the case, I'll go even further. George Bush, as vice president in the 80s, might have even told Saddam to use chemical weapons against the Iranians.
Wow.
I don't know that for sure, but it might be true.
Well,
and
he
you know
provided
what?
the
At
components.
the time,
yes, that's true, for the chemical weapons. Yeah.
at the time,
Justin,
that might have been the
If that
smart
is the
thing to
case,
do.
Jack
because
Burkman, let me go back to your earlier description about the barbarian in the desert. You want to think about that again?
Well, you see, let me flesh that out. If you want to go back, let me explain let me explain that comment. I don't retract it, and let me explain it, because if you want to go back to it, I'm going to give you a broad answer.
It's
The
inexplicable.
world, as a general matter, you got to hear me out. The world is doing well. The Western Hemisphere, Asia, Europe, there are problems, but as a general matter, the world is doing well. What's not doing well is this patch of people living in a region that we describe as the Mideast. A lot of them are locked in this mentality. They think they're living in the 6th century.
I heard that
Islam,
before.
as a general matter-
Let me pose it to Robert Fisk. Robert Fisk, why can't you just be grateful? Why this region cannot be grateful and wait for the United States, wait for the George Bush lookalike to come and fundamentally reform this area?
Look, I think the basic problem, which we never discuss on this issue, whether it be Iraq, whether it be America, or the Middle East, is that in this area, which Jack says is in barbarous darkness, are millions of people who never lost their faith in God. In the West, with the exception of a few people in Europe, not many, and I know quite a lot in certain parts of America, the West has lost its faith. We are no longer believers in God. We believe in computers, technology, democracy, you name it. And what we have now is this extraordinary situation where people who largely do not believe in God dominate culturally, socially, militarily, are people who still do believe in God, whatever Jack may think. And this is an issue which we will not face, we will not deal with. And this is the reason why we, the West, as a military coercive force, must leave the areas which are called Muslim.
Can I add to that, Justin? Can I add to that? Because there are facts on the ground. It's not just from the conceptual point of view. Why is it that we're not waiting or grateful to the savior who comes from westwards to come and save us from ourselves? It's not that. It's the fact that we have facts on the ground. Now, 7 years on from that, beleaguered time of 2003, the Iraqi people are living a life which you and I cannot even begin to imagine in the extent of its misery. Only 2 months ago, the US State Department, where Jack is only a few blocks away from right now, that department issued a report saying that Iraq has become the hub of the Middle East in terms of human trafficking, slavery, child abuse, torture and prostitution. That's his own State Department. This is 7 years on. It's facts on the ground that speak.
Add to that the misery,
Well,
the
once
poverty, and the collapse of the institutions. So where is the progress, Jack? Where is the meat?
Well, you have to understand, going back to that point, once again, the presumption there, we have to lay it bare. The presumption is that the only way to prevent all this is to lock it down with a dictator. That's what he's saying.
Nobody
because
said
once
that.
you open it up...
Nobody said that.
Nobody
Yeah, it's
said
exactly
that.
what you said. What you're
Nobody
saying
said
is,
that.
once
You're
you
saying-
open
What
the
we are
society
saying,
up...
Jack, leave the region and leave these countries and leave this government to the people. They deal with it. The Soviet Union, the most evil empire ever created in history, lasted almost 70 years. But Washington did not go and fundamentally change Moscow. It imploded. And that is inevitable. It's going to happen in the Middle East. Countries do change.
The United States could have left the Mideast alone, except one little thing happened on 9/11. These people decided to go into New York City and knock over
What's
two
that
buildings.
got to do with Iraq?
And that changed.
What's that got to do with
changed
Iraq?
the world.
No, it did not change
It
the
has to do. It has to do with Iraq, because the U.S. at that point had to take a regional perspective and had to improve the region. We had to get involved.
You
As
just
the
said,
global hegemon, the
George
hegemon
Bush
had to
lied
get
to the
involved.
American people about all that.
He did.
Justin,
He
I
did,
wanna-
and he
I
was
wanna
right
put a
to do it.
question. I want to put
He
a
was
question.
right to do it.
I thought 9/11 would come up. I was crossing the Atlantic on 9/11. Of course, my plane turned round. And I then spent the next few minutes walking around the aircraft with the crew looking for passengers I didn't like. We didn't know where these planes came from at the time. But I tell you something, the most depressing thing, I think, was when I heard Bush say, as I knew he would, 9/11 has changed the world forever. I, as a human being, will never allow 19 murderers to change my world. I think that's a gutless thing to do. But Jack let them do it.